Okay, so how does money affect economic activity? That's our question. And we have a simple answer. Money affects the economy through three things. One is prices, one is interest rates, and one is what we call real GDP, the real economy, how much stuff we produce. So the amount of money there is in the system is going to affect prices, it's going to affect interest rates, and it's going to affect how much we produce. There are people who will tell you that really money only affects prices and doesn't affect everything else, but we are too smart to buy that argument. There's this equation, MV equals PQ. It's called the quantity theory of money, the equation of exchange. I'm not going to go into the details, but this is a theory that's been around since the Roman times. And basically it says that there's a link between the amount of money in the system and what prices are. Imagine that a plane flies over America tonight and it's full of $100 bills and it just dumps out thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of $100 bills. Well, everybody is going to wake up in the morning with a lot more money, but businesses aren't going to have anything more for us to buy. So if they're smart, they're just going to raise prices to soak up that extra money. We often hear this phrase, too much money chasing too few goods. That what happens is if you just increase the amount of money in the system and you don't increase how many goods there are out to buy, then what you get is inflation. Quantity theory of money. Direct relationship between the amount of money and prices. If money supply goes up, prices go up. If money supply goes down, prices go down. The dude behind all this theory in the modern world is that guy there. He's not with us anymore, and I didn't think much of him when he was alive, but don't tell people that. It's a man named Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman said, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. In other words, he's a big proponent of this theory that says the money supply is directly tied to prices, and whatever happens to the money supply, prices are going to respond. So if there's inflation in the system, that means there's too much money. If there's deflation in the system, that means there's too little money. It's very simple. Now, remember that equation had four things in it. For that to be true, two of those four things have to be constants. In the modern world, we don't find those two things to be very constant. And that means that what we see in our modern world is a much looser relationship between the amount of money and prices. When the financial crisis hit in 2007, 2008, 2009, the Federal Reserve dumped trillions of dollars into the economy, and people like Ron Paul were screaming at the Federal Reserve that there was going to be inflation and inflation and inflation. And as we're sitting here 10 years later, there hasn't been any inflation, basically, over that period of time. Very little inflation. And some very famous people who are big believers historically in this monetary theory, this idea of money and prices being connected, have said that everything that they know is wrong. Interest rates, if you haven't ever thought about this, interest rates are actually the price of money, right? You go to the bank and you borrow money. They charge you interest rates. Interest rates are simply, easily, cleanly understood to be the price of money. Like any price, they respond to scarcity. When money is scarce, interest rates will tend to go up. When money is plentiful, interest rates will tend to go down. So I put three graphs up here, and you can see that whichever one you look at, Treasury bond rates or mortgage rates or what's called the federal funds rate, and we'll talk about what that is before too long. You can see that here at the end of this, the current period interest rates are at basically all-time lows, and that tells you something about how much money is in the system. The money supply determines interest rates, and I put a graph up here. You can ignore the graph if you feel like. If you're into graphs, there's a graph. The money supply drives interest rates. If we increase the money supply, money becomes plentiful, interest rates go down. If we decrease the money supply, interest rates will go up because money is scarce. When over the last few months there's been a fight back and forth between the Federal Reserve and the president about interest rates going up, we should understand that the Fed's making interest rates go up by pulling money back out of the system. So you have less money, higher interest rates, and the Fed's doing that because interest rates are probably too low, and they're still probably too low. The trick to this, or one of the tricks to this now, is to realize that the government controls the money supply for the most part. Not completely. The next section you're going to talk about banking. The next video we have is about banking, and it's clear that to some extent the money supply is driven by what goes on in the banking system. But the government at least thinks it controls the money supply, and for the most part it does. And if the government controls the money supply, that means the government controls interest rates. And if we believe the quantity theory of money, the government is also controlling the prices of things. So what happens in interest rates, whether it's cheap to buy a house or expensive to buy a house, low interest rates to buy a car, all of that comes and is driven by government policy, choices the government makes. Okay? Interest rates affect investment. If I'm a business and I'm thinking about building a new factory, I want there to be low interest rates when I build that factory. If interest rates are really high, I might not build that factory because the cost of borrowing the money to build the factory is too high. So interest rates are a key component in determining what investment is, and investment is a key component in telling us what's going to happen inside our economy. We need there to be lots and lots and lots of investment for the economy to be strong over time. That implies we need low interest rates. But at the same time, as it turns out, if interest rates are too low, then we get the wrong kinds of investment and bad investment, or too much investment. We build too many houses because it's so cheap. It also is going to affect consumers. Whether you buy a car or not is a function of, in large part, interest rates, because most people don't pay cash for their car. They go out and borrow the money. In the early 80s, car loan interest rates were 12 and 13 and 14%. That significantly discourages people from going out and buying a car because interest rates are so high. Now, if you wait, every now and then you get 0 interest rate or 1% interest rates. You get really low interest rates. Basically, they're giving you the money to buy the car, and you just have to pay back the price of the car with a little bit attached. It makes it much easier to buy a car, makes the car market much stronger. At the same time, you get lots of people who probably shouldn't be buying cars, and as we sit here now, we have something like 7 million people in the United States are in default on their car loans because the loan was too low, too good at terms. They took it. They probably shouldn't have. So how does the money supply affect us in our day-to-day world? It might cause inflation if there's too much. It impacts interest rates, and that in fact affects investment, and it affects consumers. Both businesses and consumers like low interest rates. Economists think we need moderate interest rates to make sure there's no inflation and to make sure that we're making wise choices in investment and consumption. So a little bit of fight there. And it's also possible that you might get a recession if there's not enough money. If the money supply were to contract, if it were to collapse, all of a sudden people can't fund the things they want to do. There's no money in the bank, interest rates being whatever they are. People might go to the bank and there might not be any money to loan for us to buy cars or buy houses or buy investment goods if we're a business. So it's possible that a recession can happen because there's not enough money in the system. So probably way too short an explanation, but between all your videos and your reading, you should probably be okay.